fuck shit up, everybody. Yeah, fuck shit up. Fuck shit up. I had to introduce someone to my terminology the other day. And introduce someone to how I talk. All right. Oh my God, we're live, you guys. Oh, I'm so excited. I know.
Girl.
I'm getting my energy like super pumped, right? Super pumped. All right. So, hello, everybody. Hello. All right. Hello and welcome to the TUF Woman Roundtable. Everybody, say hey as you come in. I am really excited for this roundtable. In fact, I'm excited for this whole month of roundtables. It's going to be really great, and we're going to be discussing all the ways that you can start helping yourself move forward as we move into I don't want to say our new normal, but our new way of being at this point in time in humanity. And so all these panels coming up are going to introduce us to ways to bring balance within ourselves so that we can bring balance out into the world. Because if you guys have not heard my lives pretty lately, everything outside of us starts within us. So we're going to be talking about all the things that we can embody within ourselves so that we can embody the things oh, and thank you for that question, Kay. So that we can embody the things that we want outside of ourselves. So before I introduce my epic and amazing guest, I'm going to go into my epic and amazing intro, and then we're going to have some fun talking about what can we do for ourselves and the collective to start moving us forward. So, oh, look, and we have YouTube people. Look at this. Hello.
What up, YouTube?
Oh, my gosh. Oh,
Hey, YouTube.
And as you guys come in, say, hey, let us know where you're coming from. If you're coming from YouTube or Facebook, please feel free to ask questions. I will broadcast them across the screen. And so make sure to join in on this conversation because this is not just our conversation. This is your conversation as well. And I believe that by bringing everybody to the table, that's actually how we have productive conversations. So please feel free to ask questions, interact. If you catch us on the replay, #replay, and make sure to share this episode if you find value so that I can continue bringing amazing people to you. So without further ado, I'm going to drop into my intro, and then we're going to get going. Yay! Oh my God. So hello and welcome to the TUF Woman Roundtable. This is the table where I invite some amazing people to pull a seat up to the table and join together in creating epic conversation. At TUF Woman, I believe that all people have the power within themselves to live life authentically, free from fear, confident in who they are, empowered as fuck to go out and create a life that sets their soul on fire. I also believe that by one person showing up in their power, we give other people permission to step into their own power, thus giving us the opportunity to rise together. And it is through this joined rising that we move ourselves and humanity forward into a more beautiful way of living and being. So pull up a seat, tune in, and join us as we create epic conversation that moves, and we remind everyone of how truly powerful we all are within. So, this makes me happy. So, you guys, before we get into this, I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, I guess starting with myself. My name is Ashley Ingram. I am your fucking fantastic host of the show. And I am a TUF Woman's coach. I am here to help all women come home to themselves and become unfuckwithable in life and business so that they can go out there and live a life that sets their soul on fire. And I also host, again, this amazing show where I bring awesome, badass people on here and we have awesome, epic conversations. And I say awesome, epic, excited, and fantastic a whole lot. So, and fuck too. So, but that's so my next, Sharon, if you want to go next.
What up? Hey, my name is Sharon Froshin. I am an ordained minister and the founder of the Community Center for Collective Consciousness. I'm an NLP practitioner, a hypnotist, an intuitive. There's not much of anything in the spiritual world that I don't at least dabble in. I am fortunate enough to know Ashley personally as a friend, and I'm always really happy to come on this show. And most of my work, if you were to call it that, in the spiritual world is about the returning of individual sovereignty to us as human beings so that We don't spend all of our time trying to work, to eat, to work, to eat, to work, to eat, to work. And we actually get back to being able to focus our time and our effort on those things which are unique to us and our individual journey here. So thank you very much for having me, Ashley. I always appreciate it.
Oh, this is going to be fun. This is gonna be fun. All right. Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's or to all this talk, because we're all in different places of the world. So I can't actually say tonight. It's my morning. So what a wonderful opportunity to be with you all and to share our passion, our expertise with everybody. I'm known as the Courage Activator because I am similar to Ashley in wanting to support you to step into your full purpose and power using, your inner nudges that want you to make a change in your life. If you want to step out into the world and live to your fullest potential, we always have to look at what's underlying those things that are holding us back. So I support people to transform anything that's preventing them from stepping out to be seen and heard, to make a difference in their own lives and everybody else's lives. And I use a myriad of modalities. So I'm a Reiki master. I use color therapy and intention. I use beautiful essential oils because I know how powerful they are to help that inner transformation. And I work with meditation and affirmations. I host a live TV show on Facebook each week called Activate Your Courage. So I'm definitely on a mission to help people expand and be the best version of themselves.
All right. Sandy, your turn.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for having me. Ashley and I met each other when we are both former, well, actually you're never a former, right? Purpose pioneer. Shout out to Alex and Thomas, our Purpose Pioneer leaders. Yes, we met when we were both coaching with them under the Purpose Pioneers and finding our purpose. And obviously Ashley has, and I have as well. I am the owner of Altitude Business Coaching. And I worked for 27 years in engineering and construction in a very male-dominated industry. So today I coach executive women in male-dominated industries. And I believe in a world where all leaders model emotionally intelligent behavior to transform the way their teams collaborate and grow, both personally and professionally. Happy to be here with all of you.
I love your belief statement, Sandy.
Thanks.
I love your belief statement. All right, Steve, finish us off.
Hey, Ashley. Thanks for having me here, Ashley. It's awesome to be here, and especially with these panel, because I think you've got some great guests tonight, as always, to be fair. So I'm Steve Alexander Simmons. I'm a peace of mind coach. And as the name suggests, the name is on the tin. I help to bring peace of mind to a lot of troubled minds. So when people are in that kind of chaotic state, when they've literally got nowhere else to go, nowhere else to turn to, people often turn to me as someone who can just dive straight into the pile of the dirt, the muck. Are we allowed to say shit on your show?
Yeah, man. Shit.
Yeah. So when people's lives are really that is where I am most comfortable. So unlike people who like to run away from the shit, I'm one of those people who run into it because I've been in it so many times. I know exactly how to get out of it. So I'm one of those people who will actually jump in with you. I'm also a support worker as well. So we can tell you what size yours is, how to get rid of it, how to improve it. So there's that skill. I've also been a medium and a spiritualist and also a Church of England minister. Now I'm a coach. And again, similar to my colleagues here, I use NLP, hypnotherapy, intuition, and just general life skills. So that's me. Thank you again, Ashley.
You're welcome. And Steve, I'm going to say that I laughed a little bit when you talked about all the shit, because I imagine you standing in a shit storm and literally just shit skating down on you.
Bring it. Love it. Definitely.
There's a visual for you.
Oh, like, you're like, I'm like, I don't know if I'd want to run into the shit, but cool, man. No, I get it. I love it. And I learned some.
I can relate to your or your shit comment or what you label it, but I usually like to call it the compost heap where all the shit goes in, and from a beautiful compost heaps, lovely sunflowers do grow.
One day I'll have to have a panel on what do you do with your shit?
Like it. Do it.
Right? What do you do? Hey, you never know. I say these things and then they happen. So that's all that matters. All right. So you guys, I'm really excited for this panel. Oh, I can't wait to get this started. So tonight we are talking about what it is that we need to do. And I don't say this specifically like these are things that you need to do, but I believe that we all share common in both different skill sets here, and we all have all this vast knowledge. So with these panels, I want to introduce ways of thinking that might be different from the way you're thinking now, and ways that you can incorporate into your life that may help you move forward. And the purpose of this is that by being able to find balance and move forward within ourselves, we can bring that out into our world and begin helping other people in the process. And really, when you're talking about global change or just a larger change, it really starts with the one person showing up in that space that we want other people to show up in as well. So like when I go out into the world, I always show up first and foremost for myself, the way I know I want other people to show up for me. And I know that in order for other people to show up for me in that space, even though that may not be the possibility, I have to first show up in that space myself. You know, I can't expect people to reciprocate that which I'm not willing to give out myself. So you guys, when we talk about where we're at right now, we're getting ready to move into, I want to call it the post-corona sector of life. You know, everything is reopening. Kay, I know, and Stephen, you guys are a little bit out there. So first and foremost, I guess I'd like to hear, where is everybody at right now as far as like moving forward within everything that's going on? What's going on in y'all's part of the world? Because it's interesting to see where everybody is at. So I want to ask, actually, Steve, what are things like where you're at right now as far as moving forward from all of this?
Who's you asking first?
You.
Me. I think similar to the whole world, I think there's definitely there's kind of an imbalance, if I'm honest. There's this kind of itch of those who just want to get out there. They want to go back to the pubs. They want to go back to the clubs. They want to go back to almost like their old life. A lot of us are talking about this. We're not going to go back to the old ways, but we're no longer there. But I think there's still that mentality of, I want that old life, so I'm going to go back to it. Thank you very much. Yet there's another group of people, large group of people, who've suddenly started to adapt and start to think, hold on a minute. Wow, I'm actually enjoying this. I'm spending more time with my children. I'm spending more time doing the stuff that I want to do. I didn't even realize I could do this. And so they're kind of waking up to a whole new load of possibilities. And they're seeing some sort of, almost like you said, an enlightenment. And I really love it. So it's kind of exciting, but there seems to be that sense of imbalance as well. I'm personally excited to see what happens, if I'm honest.
All right, and Kay, what's it like right now with where you're at as far as like everything starting to come back and reopen and moving forward?
Well, I'm in an area where they're just starting to talk about reopening things and bringing things forward. So in my area where I am, there was a hospital that was shut down and 5,000 people had to go home and stay at home. They weren't allowed off their block. So the community I'm in is just starting to peek its head out from that situation. So we're now allowed to go back to shop if we want to shop. A lot of our shops were closed, apart from the really essential ones. Schools are just going back. I do relief teaching as well from time to time. So I've just was called into work today, and I just said, no, I'm busy today. So I think, but people are still pretty much staying at home. So for me personally, I have experienced that initial feeling of, oh my gosh, what's happening? I know in the early days, my mind got carried away with the fear of the potential of this situation, which I still believe is the situation is still unraveling, because we're about to go back out into the world, and we're not quite sure what that's going to look like in the future. So I think it's really important. What I've been doing personally is, once I sort of dealt with the shock of things and got myself into a more stable situation, processed that with my, taking action. I've got a big garden. I've got a beach across the road. So I'm one of the lucky people who has nature around me and a big area to be in. But what I do know, and I like what you are always sharing, Ashley, that whatever we want comes from within. So we've got to look at all those emotions. This has been a real time for us to go within, do some deep reflection, and to make a decision about whether we're going to get stuck in that fear or whether we are going to transform that fear within. So a few weeks ago, it didn't take me long, because I'm an old hand at that beautiful pile of shit or pile of compost, and I did what I could to transform that from within, using all my tools, which I call my Activate Your Courage tools, to put myself back together again. So what I've been doing is I've been doing lots of online. I've been meeting people all around the world nearly every day. At the moment, I'm getting new people saying, do you want to come and talk, because I like what you're sharing. I like the idea of courage. And I think at the moment we are at a pivotal point where we really need to step into our personal power and courage so that we can empower ourselves away from fear and move forward into, I believe, a new version of ourselves. And I hope, so hope, that this is going to give each and every one of us a little bit of a shock reminder, or a shock or a wake up into not being complacent about life, no matter what happens from this point on, because I think we need to learn how to become expansive. We need to learn how to speak our truth. I think as a global community, people like us need to come together to expand that energy and that to get that group collective. I can see lots of new groups on Facebook. I think it's wonderful. There are a lot of people who are stepping out, who are using this as an impetus for change. And let's face it, our world certainly needs change in all areas, I would say.
Amen for that. All right, and I want to ask Sandy and Sharon where you guys are at as well, and then I actually have the perfect question to start this off, and I think it's a new one. So, what is life like where you guys are at? And Sharon, where exactly are you at? That was the question asked earlier. What time zone are you in?
I'm in the Pacific time zone. I'm in the desert north of Los Angeles right now. I left Los Angeles the weekend that everything, the weekend of March 13th. I don't want to say fled, but kind of fled to the desert, just because one can never underestimate the stupidity of large groups of people who are panicked. So I left for the desert, and that's where I've been. And like, there's no real sign of, it's almost like being in a bubble, that we're really isolated. The coronavirus doesn't do well in heat. It's been hot here for a while. So where I'm at right now, I'm not really experiencing the coronavirus as something that's actually affecting my day-to-day life. But as an American, I'm certainly not happy with the constitutional rights that are being removed as a result of a virus that has a 99% survival rate and is killed by soap and water. So I am reaching that point soon where I'm probably not going to be too nice about being locked down anymore.
Oh, you're going to like this question I have next then. All right. So, Sandy, how are things going in Colorado?
Things in Colorado are fantastic, actually. We're starting slowly to reopen, and I think everybody is kind of uber sensitive, if you will, to getting back out. You know, the beauty of living in a place like Colorado is the weather it's been upwards of 70 and 80 degrees in the last couple of weeks. So I've been able to get outside, and I do every day, hike, walk, run, whatever, to just get out into nature, because I think there's some very calming, at least for me, soothing effects when it comes to nature. But, the one thing that I will say is I just got into, I shouldn't say I got into anything, because I don't get into anything. I don't get into debate too much. As somebody who speaks around the world on leading with emotional intelligence, I try to regulate quite well. But I think the important thing right now is to just realize that everybody's doing the best that they can do with the information that they have, which changes constantly, right? And so we need to, part of leading with emotional intelligence means suspending judgment, so not judging others for what it is that they're doing or how they're acting because they believe they're acting in the best interest of themselves and their families.
I like that. And that leads nicely into this. So I think one of the key things that I would like to start us off with here is talking about sovereignty. And Sharon, you're probably going to take off with this one. So when we talk about what is one of the things that I especially feel is needed moving forward is returning to a space of sovereignty within self. And Sharon, I'm going to let you talk about sovereignty because you explain it the best. Because this may be the first time that people have really come face to face with this. And Sandy, I think that works well when you talk about emotional intelligence because being able to be sovereign within oneself allows you to tap into that pool of emotional intelligence that you have within yourself, because I believe we all have the capability to be incredibly emotionally intelligent, but it starts with understanding our own emotions. So Sharon, if you would like to explain to everybody what sovereignty is and why it's so key in moving forward into a new, more balanced way of doing things in this world. And then I would love for us to kick this conversation off from there.
So sovereignty is the idea that each human being is not a citizen to a nation or a number to a financial system, but rather a sentient sovereign being who has a right to believe what they want to believe, to live the way they want to live, to worship the way that they want to worship, and that the interference of governments is not only not called for, but also often destructive to the individual authenticity of people who are just trying to figure out who they are and why I'm here. And I can guarantee you that why you're here is not to pay taxes and die. There's so much more to why you're here. But this, I call it the representation of toxic masculinity that is government, has really through society kind of brainwashed us into believing that we are this small little cog, an ego in a bag of skin that needs to be fixed and toyed with and changed in order to be socially acceptable. And this is a time of understanding that the foibles and the things that you came into this world with that make you unique, that make people do a double take, that truly cause pause in the continuum of time and space, are those things that are uniquely yours, not what you've been taught in unified education, or not what you've been told you need to eat in medicine that has no idea what it's doing. We can see it has no idea what it's doing right now. Sovereignty is a return to understanding that my own intuition will guide me. I am God. I am God in human flesh. That's what I am. I'm here to learn lessons. I'm here to change. I'm here to grow. And I think we spend our whole lives looking for a God that we're never going to find because we're looking from the vantage point of God. And eyeballs can't see themselves, just like teeth can't bite themselves. You're not going to find God outside of you. You're going to find God within. And the idea of sovereignty is a return to the individual first and the group second. And in so doing, honoring those things that each of us uniquely brings into the world.
And I have to ask going on that because I firmly believe that, like you said, it really starts from being able to work within ourselves. I have to ask what each of you thinks in regards to that moving forward. What are some of those things that we need to be looking for within ourselves so that we can start moving forward in a way that is productive for us and the way that honors who we are outside of the boxes and the labels and everything else that has been put on us from society? And that is that what we're beginning to see is maybe no longer beneficial to not only us as an individual, but us as a whole.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. I have a great example of something that happened to me about 10 years ago when I was at work. And I was working in nuclear power at the time, and it was my first time in nuclear power, my first time in project management. And I was surrounded by men, surrounded by men that led very bureaucratically. And so I looked around and figured out, how am I going to blend in? And I started leading like the rest of them, right? Pounding my fist on the table and yelling and screaming. And, you know, about a year ago, I started studying more about divine feminine and divine masculine and how we're filled with both and how there's a time for each. And, you know, I think that was a really a turning point in my career where I realized I can't lead like everybody else leads. I need to lead like in a way that's authentic to me. And so as soon as I figured that out, then people started listening and people started following and people started caring because they knew that I cared. And I think that seems like a testament to what Sharon is talking about, and that it really comes from figuring out it within yourself, right? What works for you, and knowing that there's a time to cry and there's a time to laugh, and that there is nothing wrong with showing that emotion and that vulnerability in life and in work, you know?
Amen.
Awesome.
I love that. And Steve, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, because you are a wonderful testament to embracing everything that is uniquely wonderful about yourself.
When Sharon was talking about that whole sense of that withinness, I have to admit, the Christian inside of me, the evangelist in me, just wanted to applaud her and just go, yay! Why? Because one of the main things that Jesus preached about, I'm not here to preach, was he said, the kingdom of God is within. The kingdom of God is within. And so there's a lot of kind of soul searching, as we've mentioned, about, well, what does that mean? You know, is this heaven and earth going to come together? Is this veil that we're talking about just going to just disintegrate? If we want this heaven, then why can we not have it on earth? Surely there's a possibility here. Surely we're getting a glimpse of this, if this is possible. So people are kind of waking up to that. And also, there's this lovely word that we're all bouncing around a lot, and I'm seeing it more and more. It's this word authenticity, and people are going, well, what is real? What is true? Hold on a minute. All my life, I haven't been true to myself because I've been taking on board generational stuff. I've been speaking from other people's words, and I'm guilty of it. You know, the amount of times I've come out with my own parents' phrases, and I'm cringing. I'm like, that's not me. That's not my voice. That was my parents' voice, or that was my friend's voice. And so there's that sense of people going, oh, hold on a minute. What is the real me? I want to be the real me because it's something to celebrate. It's something to be excited about. I am okay. I'm actually fun to be around. And there's this real kind of exploration of what is me. And I'm loving it, absolutely loving it. And the closer we get to this sense of authenticity, I think that the better, I think.
Stephen, now I see why you made a good minister, man. I'd be up, if I went to your church, I'd be the one hollering, yes! The Lord!
Amen.
All right. You could preach Baptist all day long, I'm telling you. I got baptized in the Baptist church. My God, fire and brimstone right there. All right. Well, so I want to dive into this a little bit more, because you guys are all pretty familiar with the divine masculine and feminine. That's really the theme of this. And when we're talking about moving forward into a new way of being, there's no way to move around this subject and not discuss what the divine masculine and the divine feminine is. And I think there's no better time than now to start talking about, and I know I've got those panels coming up, but I think there is really no better time to start talking about the divine masculine and feminine right now, and why finding balance within through those energies and just finding balance within ourselves is really going to be that key to moving us forward into that sovereignty and that humanity that we look forward, that really is that embodiment of that heaven on earth. So I would love to open this up to anybody who would like to start discussing what the divine masculine and the divine feminine is for this. I'm not quite as educated, so I will digress to some of the more educated people on this one to really give a good view on what those energies are within us. Looking at you, Sharon.
So often the divine masculine is experienced as a positive energy charge. So it is what turns the light on. The female, the divine feminine, is the negative energy, which is the wire that provides space for the masculine energy to travel from circuit to circuit. So you need both a negative and a positive in order for any fixture in your house to work. The problem is that we have let both of these energies become toxic in nature. So I'm not straight. I'll be upfront with that. I'm gay. So I don't have relationships with men that are romantic in nature, although I do have several close male friends, and Steve is one of them. But what I can see as a gay person standing outside of the straight world is that the energy of toxic masculinity and toxic femininity has the genders attempting to force each other to do what they want. Men attempting to force women to give them sex, and women attempting to force men to take care of them. And these are actually functions of each of these energies' roles. It is the role of the divine masculine to provide for the community and to ensure that the worship and the spiritual work that goes on in the community is taken care of through protection and provision. It is also the divine feminine to fully let in the universe, the power, the God, whatever the tribe was celebrating, to make a space in that tribe that not only honored the work of the tribe as spiritual people, but also bolstered through prayers, through different ceremonies, the effectiveness of the divine masculine in the way that they were able to go out and conquer. But what has happened now is the divine masculine has been turned against the divine feminine, and the divine feminine against the masculine. And I don't personally believe that that's on accident. I strongly believe that men and women have been engineered over the last 50 years to hate each other, and with good reason, because a family that is united tends to not let a government do shit that it shouldn't be doing in their families. And now is a time of owning. Like, I'm a woman. I own what is mine. I'm also extremely masculine, though, because I was raised by a father who was my mother and a mother who was my father. The energies were switched. So to me, I don't see energy assigned to gender the way that most people do. I experience the energy of it first and the visual experience of it second. So if I were to, from my vantage point, give advice as to how we can find our way out of this morass, which I really do believe we're in, is positive regard. Look, I've been raped. I'm not somebody who hasn't experienced violence at the hands of men, but you're not going to get me to hate them. I will not hate men. I will not. I refuse to hate men. And I refuse to hate men because of my father and my brother and men like Steve that I know are good men. So if there's an exception to the rule, it's no longer a rule. And that's what I think we need to look at. There are empty-headed, bimbo-ish, very vain and materialistic women out there, like the Kardashians pop to mind. That doesn't mean that that's all women. Not all women care about the size of the wallet. Not all women, that we have these extremes that we've been given, that all men are this way, and all women are this way, and men always do this, and women always do that. That's not true. The energy flows in the ways that we play with it. We've been playing with it badly, and it's time to return to the divine forms of those energies, not the toxic. I hope that that answers your question.
It does. And I have to ask all of you that really brings us on that. In regards to these energies and moving forward, is what do we feel are some things that are needed to we need to let go of so that we can move forward? We talk so much about moving forward, and nobody really wants to talk about what are the things we think we need to let go of. And I don't mean this in a bad way, but we walk through this life holding on to things that aren't ours, right? When we really check in with ourselves and these energies, it's like, what are these things? And you touched a little bit on that belief that we have. And I'm a lot like you. I remember when I started even being vocal about this, I was like, I really just completely disapprove of that whole all men ain't shit and all bitches are crazy attitude that we seem to be carrying around within the popular opinion, right? You hear it all the time. Well, women all the time, I just can't find a good man. Just all men are shit and da 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 da. And it's like, well, I mean, you know, if you just release that belief, you would probably find a good man. So I have to ask you guys, moving forward and looking forward and things, and in amongst this energy, what are some things you think are beneficial for us as people? And I'm not saying so much as humanity, but as people, sovereign people, what are some things that you guys think are beneficial for us to release so that we can start moving forward into a way that's productive, so that we can start learning to balance the energies and come into a way that is more divine and harmonious?
So I believe we're all a product of our experiences, right? But I think that, and Sharon said it nicely, we still have the freedom of choice. We still have the power of thought, right? And so part of what we need to release is this toxicity that she talks about from the perspective of, the stereotypical and the hypocrisy and all of that leads us to believe one way or another. When we speak our truth, right? When we speak from our heart, from a divine place, I believe that the only person who's going to judge is God, and I have no room to judge anyone, right? And so if we believe that and we speak from that truth, the problem is that society and others have got it to where when we do speak our truth, sometimes it's not taken well and received well. And so then, when things aren't received well, we have a tendency to pull back. We need to lean in. We need to continue leaning in and speaking our truth and letting people hear. And when we speak from our heart, and we speak from a place of love rather than judgment, that's where I think we need to be.
I love that, and I second that. I had a live I did yesterday, and I said the F word quite a bit. And for those of you that know me, that's it's just second nature for me to say that. It's just I like you, Sandy, and Sharon. I came up in masculine industries, the hospitality industry specifically, which if you haven't been a part of it, is 90% male. And I want to say like a large percentage of toxic male as well. And I don't say that in a bad way. It's just the way that industry tends to be. And so I say it a lot. But I was on the live yesterday, and when I get really passionate, it just comes more naturally.
It just flows.
And I have a woman on there, very nice, and I don't say that this as a way to call her out, but just as an example because it's the most recent one I can think of. And she said very nicely that I did not have to say the word fuck to get my point across. And you know what? I think it is in those points in time where we see a lot of that disconnect happen. And all of a sudden it's like, how dare you say anything about how I talked, and that's when we see those people just start going off on those tyrannical comment rants that a lot of us have gotten privy to just start scrolling, going, oh my God, where's the popcorn right now? Because I want to watch how this is going to go. But instead, I chose to let her go, you know what, that's fine. And I understand that you don't like that. Not everybody loves it. It's not received. You are more than welcome to unfollow me if that makes you uncomfortable. And we proceeded to have a conversation. And I don't know what the other comment was, but I went, I'm always, I know that we're always growing, and I understand what you're saying. I receive that. I said, but I'm exactly where I need to be doing what I need to do. And if at one point, she said, oh, because I wasn't there yet because I had not learned to control my mouth. And I said, well, I'm exactly where I need to be. And, one day I'll get where I'll continue moving where I need to go. And at the end of it all, she's, it really came to this point where we were able to come together. And although maybe she did not love that I still was cussing, she recognized that I was exactly where I needed to be. And she really did not need to be judging that situation. So I love that you talk about leaning in with love, because so often what's happening I see right now is the moment someone says something against what our initial thought or belief or what we're saying is, we are automatically like, oh my God. And we close up, right? We just don't want to do it.
Or we push back, or we get defensive, Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, I think other people probably would have really gone F. I've seen that happen. They're like F. Now they say it as many times as possible. Necessary. That is necessary. But Steve, I have to ask you to input too, because I want to know your thoughts on moving forward. What are some of the things that you've seen coming about that would be beneficial for us to kind of just leave behind so that we can start moving into a more harmonious way of being and bringing these energies into play?
I think I'd just like to touch on a few things that have been mentioned today. I was at, I used to be a family worker, and I was at this children's conference, and it was all about how, as parents, we should kind of express love, talk about love. And I just sat there quietly, and I put my little hand up as I do, and I said, well, what do you mean by this word love? And the leader just looked at me and glared at me with these red eyes. What do you mean you don't know what the love is? And I says, well, my definition of love is you want to hurt me, you want to abuse me, you want to manipulate me, you want me for your own benefit. That is my definition of love. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is we use this word love an awful lot, but when I was growing up, my mom said to me, and I hated her for this, but it's true. She said, Stephen, you don't know what the word love is. Now, I was only, 11 years old, whatever, but she was true, and it's right. So as men and women just in relationships in general, I'm not even going to use the whole men and women thing, right? Often we come into this relationship with different definitions of what love is. And where do we get the role model of love from? Right? So if my role model is of my dad and my dad's always shouting at my mom, I'm just using it as an example, then as a man, I'm like, wow, that is how I treat women. This is how I should be. And I'm not saying, we're carbon copies of our father, or our mother, whatever. I'm just saying that without the right role models in society, we're often going to struggle. And when you're in a relationship with someone else, their definition of love is going to be different to your definition, unless you come together and say, well, when you say I love you, what does that mean? And so you can kind of talk about what does love mean in that particular relationship, because there's often that miscommunication. And I think love is just used far too much. So moving forward, I'd love to see a generation that kind of communicates a lot better, listens, and learns to love what it means for them personally.
Well, and you touched on that really nicely. You know, we don't often ask, you know, we first and foremost, I believe, and I saying this from my own personal experience, I think before, for a lot of us, we are not used to asking ourselves those questions, or even asking our partner. Like, it blows my mind to this day when you ask a person, what makes you happy? What do they start doing? They start listing all the shit that doesn't make them happy. Well, I don't like this, and I don't like this, and I don't like this. And I go, no. What makes you happy? No, like, what makes you happy? So I think as a culture and as human beings, we are not used to asking ourselves these questions, let alone asking our spouses or our partners. And I think a lot of that comes from growing up. We're told not to think about ourselves, right? You go back to that conditioning that's brought into us. We are taught not to think about ourselves, that to think about oneself is to be selfish, and that you must think about the whole and not yourself, because in order for you to serve properly, you must be thinking about other people, and you must constantly be taking care of people. And so I think a lot of where we are stumbling now is that inability, first and foremost, to think of ourselves and for ourselves above all else, and to also at the same time of other people, and not in the sense of that you need to take on the way you are, like their reaction to you, if that makes sense. But but just being able to be considerate of how other people are walking through this life. So talking about releasing the judgment, Sandy, you talked about that a lot, just releasing the judgment. I think to this day, my favorite thing to talk about is still, and you can probably talk about this a little bit, is just, I think one of the beautiful things we need to take on, not only releasing the judgment, but instilling compassion for people as a whole. Like, I'm talking about true, real compassion. And that's, to me, compassion and sovereignty are linked together. Because to be compassionate in this world is to really just understand that we are all on this journey together, and while at the same time we're all on our own journey, and that really all we're needing to focus on is our own specific journey, and recognize that everybody is on their own journey, and that's okay in this world.
You know, there's a time to reap and there's a time to sow. And when I talk about emotional intelligence, I purposefully start talking about intrapersonal intelligence, because we need to have that self-assessment and that self-regulation and that motivation. We need to have that internal before we can build and grow to a place where we have social skills and empathy. It's really difficult for us to be empathetic and to care about the emotional makeup of other people if we don't understand our own emotions and can't regulate those. So there's a reason that we start with the intrapersonal and move. So I believe, right, yeah, it's like the whole saying about how you can't pour from a cup if it's not full, right? So the idea is you need to work on yourself before you can really care and be empathetic towards others.
Amen. Okay, so I have to ask, what are your thoughts moving forward on things that we need to for the best part of ourselves to move forward in the world?
I'd like to come back to the idea of the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and I think recognizing that within ourselves and learning what that means, because if we're not in balance with our masculine and our feminine, we can become over assertive, or we can become over aggressive if our masculine is not balanced. If our feminine is not balanced, we can become withdrawn and depowered. Whereas to me, the masculine means the masculine means knowing when and how to use that assertiveness and that energy that comes with the masculine. And in the feminine side of ourselves, we need to learn how to be receptive and to be open and to be soft and gentle. And there are moments when all of this is, all parts of that are needed. And I guess in my past, which is always, you can only ever speak for yourself. In my past, I didn't have the energy of the masculine working for me. And when you learn to do that deep work within yourself, your masculine and your feminine both work for you in harmony, so that other people can connect with you, and we can become an example to other people about how we can, cope with certain situations. I also believe that if we want change in the world, the only point of power that we really have is within ourselves. So that's where that inner work works for us, because once we become, like what Sandy's talking about, emotional intelligence, it's all interconnected. So that inner work is so important, and looking at things from a different lens, not just from our own lens, gives us the potential to accept diversity. So we're all here talking together. We're all very different people, but we have common grounds, common interests, common beliefs. And that's what brings us together to have an open discussion like this. And I think it's great to see so many people embracing their inner, I'll call it courage, to step out and start talking and communicating with the globe in online forums like this. And I think we have the responsibility to share our expertise and our passions more than ever in these current times.
And I like that you talked about responsibility, because moving forward, I feel that one of the greatest things that we have is that responsibility to do our due diligence. And I don't feel that this is talked about enough. So the due diligence, and that's really having that discernment to ask ourselves, what is it for me, right? We don't talk about that enough, and really understanding is going back to that sovereign self. Is what is the truth for me? We see, Cindy, you talked about there's a plethora of information of all the things that we need to do to stay healthy, and all the things that we need to do, stay inside and all that. But how often are we asking ourselves, how often am I digging below the surface of all the things that are coming at me? How often am I doing my due diligence to make sure that the information I am sharing is productive and helpful versus destructive and harmful? How often am I doing my due diligence to make sure that I am taking in the things that I need that are going to help me operate at my highest level? So I guess my next question would be, what do you guys feel are some of the things that we need to actually start implementing in our lives to help us start moving forward, navigating, what we're going into next? So navigating so that we can continue and we don't fall back to those old ways, like Steve talked about. We do have that half and half right now, where there's a lot of people going, well, the way things were is not going to work. But then you have so many people where they're still stuck in that tape track, I guess, of the way things were, and I just want to go back. And for a lot of us, you know, we know that there's no going back to it, but it's like, what can we do to keep moving forward so that we are not falling back into destructive patterns, into just ignoring it? And because I think one of the biggest things that I saw that was such a beautiful blessing is this: all these people had to actually stop and stay home, myself included. We had to stop. We had to slow the fuck down and stop doing all the things, and that hit everybody like a freaking brick wall. like literally hit everybody like a brick wall. I know, Sharon, you were supposed to be hiking right now, weren't you? You were supposed to be hiking on a trail.
I'm supposed to be doing the PCT, yeah.
Yeah. So I have to ask you guys, what do you guys think are some things that we need to, would be beneficial? And I'm not saying, I don't want to say need to, because I don't believe that anybody needs to take anything on. And that's where that due diligence comes in. But what do you guys feel are beneficial for us as human beings, as spiritual beings in a human experience moving forward, to take on in our lives to help us to continue to move forward into that sovereign place so that we can discern what is the truth for us?
So I think that, you know, if nothing else, like you said, it caused us all to slow down. It also caused us to look at things that we take for granted, right? Spending more time with our families, being able to do things that we wouldn't other.
Oh no.
That happens every time.
That's a bummer. I really enjoyed her.
I know. Well,
maybe we could suggest she goes out and comes back, because someone did.
oh, there she
There
is.
she is.
Can you still hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
All of a sudden I got the circles. What was I saying? Okay. You know, oftentimes it sometimes takes something bad happening for us to actually change the course, right? And so what I would say is all of the things that we did for the good, you know, let's not go back to our old ways. Let's not go back to deciding that, you know, we can't spend all this quality time with our families, that we can't slow down, right, Ashley, if that's what we decide we want to do, you know, and really follow our intuition to do what is right for us, you know, no matter what is happening in the rest of the world, right? Continue doing that.
Yeah, I think it's a time for people to reevaluate what was not working in their life, things that didn't bring them joy, peace, happiness, and balance, and start searching for or taking the steps towards what they do want in their life. Because we now know how precious our situation is, and how how delicate our situation is. None of us had any. I mean, when we stop and think, how many weeks ago, I've lost count of weeks, but it's in the scheme of events, it's not that long ago that we were all living life on our journey, doing our thing, taking it all for granted, but also I think on this treadmill that was going round and round and round. And for many people who have not made a switch to bring more balance into their life, it must have been a rude awakening. So people need to now go, well, which parts of this gave me joy and sustenance, and what can I do now to bring those things into my life moving forward? For example, a lot of people here, the shops were sold out of seedlings. I know people who have a seed company where there's non-hybrid seeds. A lot of people are starting to grow gardens. Well, that should be the norm. It shouldn't be the exception, in my view. So making sure that we become as sustainable and self-reliant as possible is one thing. Another thing is I'm very concerned about the situation that part of it doesn't seem to be in our control now, such as vaccinations and 5G and lots of things that we're being what's the word? We seemingly are being controlled. We have no control as an individual to make decisions about whether we believe they are for us. In Australia, they are starting to have mandatory vaccinations, flu vaccinations in homes, in nursing homes, and people who are working as health service people. So these are some of the issues that I would love to see people get behind and to become aware of, so that we can make our own minds and not have all that dictated to us. I'm not quite sure what's happening with you people in those areas, but these, become aware, get educated, and take some action, and stop being such puppets in the greater scheme of things.
Amen. And I'll say that some of the comments aren't coming through, and I'm reading one, and Sharon, you can go back and read it. I'm kind of glad they're not coming through, and I'm not going to give this man any space of day to say what he just said, because this is one of the things that just needs to go away. But Angel said, totally agree with Sharon in saying how many people are okay with our rights being taken away. We are like puppets. And she said something, I think what's happening is StreamYard's having a disconnect with Facebook. But she said that she loved that, Steve. So we have been getting some comments. They're just not coming through on this stream. So yeah, I love that you touched on that, Kay. I think that's important. Like I started teaching my kids survival skills, how to create a fire. We started talking about, I'm creating backpacks for them. So survival backpacks, with water purifiers. And I think it's important to start going back to the way we were. You know, I started, my son, I am incredibly blessed that my ex-in-laws still process, and I know I'm going to have some people on here, some vegans that are not going to be happy with me, but they process their own beef and their own pork. Okay. They can. I learned to can from my ex-in-laws. They grow a garden every single year, and so they can and produce their own produce throughout the whole year, and they go seasonal. So they produce different fruits and vegetables in the summer, spring, winter, and then, or in the fall, and then they let their gardens replenish in the winter, and they do that normal cycling. So for me, it was coming back to this space of what am I not teaching my children that they may actually need to know, because we are so technologically inundated, but how many of us actually know how to go out and grow our own food, these things that are necessary that we may need down the road? So Steve, you've been a little quiet. I have to ask you, what is it that you think that we need to do moving forward?
I'm going to say something now, and I don't know if it's a generational thing or an age thing, but do people still use the hashtag best life thing?
I don't know. They do say living their best life.
I see. I mean, this is a curious question, because it was one of those things I used to see. I'm like, what is that? What is that best life thing people keep talking about? I thought, I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to embrace it. And so for me, it was about, what does a best life look like? What does the best life feel like? What does a best version of me feel like, look like? Because I want to have a piece of that, because the better version of me is going to be something better. It's going to want more. It's going to want to be more. And so I kind of like to see people might kind of more embrace that. Well, if you want this best life that you keep talking about, what does that look like? If you want to see this better version of you, what does that look like? Go and do that. Go and do that. And I think we've come to an age now where we've got that freedom to do that. And I'd like to personally see that happen more.
Amen. Sharon, did you already put your part in, or did I miss that?
I don't think I did, but I could have lost track. For me, we need to start looking at societal programming. That's where we need to start. For instance, the idea of good and bad and right and wrong didn't exist before the Judeo-Christian religions. Didn't exist. But it's a wonderful way to control people and to tell people that they have to do a certain thing to be accepted or not. I'm going to be really honest with you, and a lot of people in the spiritual community don't want to hear this, but there are people who are here and they're in dead center in their life purpose, and they're evil, because God cannot not exist in evil. Either God is omnipresent everywhere, including encompassing evil, or God is not. You can't have an omnipresent God that is not everywhere. Same thing applies for you. If God is omnipresent and you are somewhere, then you are part of God. If God is omnipotent, has all power, and you exercise power, then you are exercising the power of God. A lot of what society initially was supposed to do was to create safety for a group of people, but it has become toxic. It has become this toxic masculinity where our children are ripped apart from a young age, their creativity stolen from them so they can go to school and all study the same thing, half of which, if you go look at our textbooks, is completely out of date. The medicines that we're given are killing us. When the founder of modern medicine said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food, and doctors get maybe 5 hours of nutrition in their training. We need to start looking at how we got here, and the way we got here was blindly following somebody else like lemmings to feel safe. We have sacrificed our sovereignty to feel safe, and look at the world around us. We're no safer. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. Canada had the worst mass shooting of its history last month. We're no safer than we were before 9/11. Not an ounce safer than we were. This is a new 9/11. This is a new chance for us to decide, are we going to surrender further rights in pursuit of safety, or will we finally be the gods that we are and step into our sovereignty? Because I guarantee you, the people who own 95% of the wealth in the world do not want to see that happen. Do not. So if you really want to change the world, if you want to have a new experience, if you want to have a playground in which awakening is something that is welcomed and embraced, let's start looking at the way we believe about society and what society has taught us about ourselves.
Amen. And I'm going to say this, the one thing, and I'm going to go back to what I talked about. I think the one thing we need to move forward is to have compassion, and not only compassion for ourselves, but compassion for other people, and to lose the belief that our belief is the belief.
Yes.
To lose the belief that our belief is the belief, and that for anybody to have a belief outside of that means that they are wrong and you are the right and you are the person who knows it all. So, because I think a lot of us are stuck in this egoic trap where we believe that when somebody comes to us and expresses something that is different from us, it triggers us and we feel threatened, and our belief system takes over, and all of a sudden it's like our belief is the belief, and anything outside of it is wrong. And I will say that was one of my biggest reasons that I left the church, and not saying this against anybody who's in religion, because I have a deep love for God and everything else, but it was a huge reason I left organized religion, was because I felt that to pose things outside of what I was being told was to be wrong, was to feel shame, was to be guilty, was to not belong. And to me, my understanding of God ultimately is that God loves everybody. God did not create an imperfect person, as you said, Sharon. God did not create something that is a mistake. So how to come and to be met by someone who is to be expressing the love of God and to be expressing something otherwise, to me was very disheartening. So for me, I would love to see people going back to a space of being able to openly and lovingly accept the fact that everybody has their own belief systems, and it is not our job to change anybody's belief system. It is instead our job to ask ourselves, what is our belief system, and to be grounded that, and to allow other people the respect to operate in the same space. So for me, again, it's just coming back to that state of overwhelming compassion for ourselves and humanity as a whole, because I think that in order that by tapping into that compassion, we will be able to begin seeing people for exactly who they are. And one thing I've learned from doing the show, when someone is seen, when someone feels heard and seen, that is when we are able to open up into that space of love and that field of possibilities, as Thomas always talks about. So that's my little contribution to that.
Rumi.
I want to go back to something Steve said, because and what you touched on, Ashley, and when your belief becomes, you believe that what you believe should be what everybody else believes, kind of thing. And just even Steve's comment about love and what love means to him. You know, I mean, we're like, I go back to, we are a product of our experiences, and you never know what's happening in anybody else's world unless you actually take the time to ask, right? So as a coach, one of the things that I firmly believe is never make a statement when you can ask a question. And so we have to get more into that mindset of asking, right, as opposed to telling, because that's when we learn, that's when our minds open up, and that's when we can hear what others have to say and not push our beliefs on them, but understand what their beliefs are and be open to that.
Exactly. Amen to that. Amen. All right, you guys. We are 5 minutes past, but I think that this was such a wonderful conversation to go 5 minutes over. And I just want to say I am so grateful for all of you being on here. I know the comments didn't work. I had to watch them there for the last little bit. But I just want to thank you guys so much for being on here. For everybody that participated in the comments, I got your comments. They just did not come through on the screen, so I will work on that for the next one. But I want to take this time today, you guys, for you to remind you just to soak in what came here and to start asking yourselves the questions. When questions come up for you, really take the time to deep dive into it, because going back to what everybody talked about, all this really starts with the inner work, and the inner work is only done by ourselves. There is no expert on you besides you. You are your expert, so you know the answers to your questions. Maybe you need some help sometimes, and that's where coaches and mentors and everything else comes in. But at the end of the day, my hope is that with all of these and with all the stuff that we have going on, you will do your due diligence to dive into your own questioning and your own divinity and your own sovereignty. And as Sharon so nicely put it in a question, is if you say, you know what, Sharon, say it, if you are God. So I guess
if you are God and God knows what God is doing, how can you possibly make a mistake?
Amen. Amen. So thank you guys so much for being on here. I'm always so appreciative for all my guests that come on here. Thank you, Steve, for being up till 1 o'clock in the morning with us. So I'm gonna get off here to go to bed. And as you guys, and Angela said, all great ideas from the panel moving forward. And thank you, Angela, for being on for like episode 76 from day one, man. Angela's going to get an MVP trophy. She's going to have I'm going to get her a stadium seat to all my shows. Like when they get she's always going to have tickets.
She'll be there too.
I know she will. She'll be, Ashley, stop cussing. Stop cussing. But all right, you guys, so join us this Thursday for another amazing story. We will be talking about another amazing story, another amazing woman sharing her story. As always, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then stay tuned with us this month as we dive even further into the masculine and feminine and bringing balance within ourselves so that we can bring balance out into the world. So thank you guys again. If you catch us in the replay, #replay, and I will see y'all on Thursday. Oh my God.
Thanks.